The river had been calm only moments before, just a thin ribbon of water winding through the Arizona Canyon, glinting in the late summer sun. The Apache woman had stepped into it only to cool her feet, to wash dust from her skin, to find a quiet moment away from the world's noise. She hadn't expected the tremor in the ground, the sudden roar that rose like thunder rolling through stone. By the time she looked up, the flash flood was already there, a wall of churning brown water surging around the bend. She fought it, clawed her way toward the bank, but the river was stronger. It swallowed her footing, pulled her under, ripped away cloth and breath alike. Only sheer instinct drove her back to the surface, gasping, reaching for anything that wasn't water. And when she finally grasped onto a jut of rock, she had nothing left on her but fear and soaked skin. The rancher saw the flood before he saw her. He had been riding along the ridge, checking fence lines, listening to the distant rumble that meant trouble down below. Flash floods in the territory were killers. They came fast, moved faster, and left nothing behind but wreckage. He spurred his horse down the slope, boots hitting the ground before the animal even stopped. Then he saw her, half collapsed on the riverbank, hair plastered to her back, arms shaking violently, water still draining from her lungs in shuddering breaths. For a long moment he didn't move. He simply looked at her, not with shock or judgment, but with the practical measuring of a man trying to understand how bad the damage was. She struggled to speak, voice raw. "The water. It swept my clothes away." Her eyes darted downward in shame, then to him waiting for disgust. Mockery or something worse. Instead, the rancher didn't flinch. He didn't let his gaze drop, didn't let discomfort shape his expression. Without a word, he reached for the buttons of his shirt. His movements were slow, deliberate, not the movements of a man staring at a woman, but the movements of someone helping a human being who had just fought death itself. Once the shirt was free, he stepped toward her and draped it gently around her shoulders, careful to touch only fabric and not skin. He turned his back immediately, putting himself between her and the open canyon as if guarding her from the world while she regained what the river had taken. "Get warm," he said quietly. "Take your time." And he meant it. For a while, neither spoke. She pulled the shirt tightly around herself, its warmth a stark contrast to the river's cold bite. Her breath steadied, though her body still trembled with aftershocks of fear and exhaustion. She studied the man's broad back, scarred, weathered, bearing the story of a life made of dust and labor. He was older than her, stronger, but not in the way that frightened her. His strength was steadier, quieter, like the roots of a tree rather than the swing of an axe. When she finally stood, her voice was soft. "You did not look at me." He didn't turn around. "Didn't need to," he said. "You almost drowned." That's what mattered. She blinked, surprised that such simple words could be the truest comfort she'd felt in years. When he did turn, it was only when she said, "I am ready." Her hair dripped onto the borrowed shirt, the hem brushing her knees. She looked smaller like that, vulnerable yet defiant, shaken yet unbroken. The rancher nodded once, respectful. "There's a camp a mile east," he said. "Fire, blankets, I'll walk ahead if that makes it easier." Again she paused, studying him with eyes that saw through people more quickly than they liked. "You are different from the others," she whispered. He shrugged, looking away toward the canyon's mouth. "River took enough from you. Wasn't gonna let dignity be another." Her lips parted, not quite a smile, but something close, something grateful. She followed him, her bare feet silent against the sand, each step pulling her farther from death and closer to an unexpected sense of safety. As they walked, the last of the floodwaters rushed behind them, carving new channels in the earth, erasing tracks and reshaping the land. But ahead of them, the canyon widened, sunlight breaking across the rocks in a way that made everything seem new. For the first time since the river dragged her under, the Apache woman felt her heartbeat slow into something like calm. She watched the rancher's steady stride, the easy confidence in the way he moved. And she knew one thing with certainty: the river had stripped her bare. But it had also delivered her into the presence of a man who treated her humanity with the care of something sacred. And as strange as it felt, she did not fear him. Not anymore. The rancher kept his eyes on the river, giving her privacy as she held the shirt close to her bare skin. The fabric smelled of horses, cedar, and long days under the Arizona sun. She wondered why a man who owed her nothing would treat her with such quiet respect. She watched him kneel at the water's edge, filling his canteen as though the world had not just shifted between them. His silence wasn't cold, it was careful, the kind of silence that belonged to someone who'd lived too long with loss. She felt the weight of it when she finally whispered, "Why help me?" He paused but didn't turn. His voice carried low across the riverbank. "Decency ain't a language barrier." The words stunned her more than the flood. Men often spoke big promises. Few offered kindness without expecting anything in return. This one did. She stepped closer, the oversized shirt brushing her knees. The wind tugged at her damp braids. "My people say strangers owe us nothing," she murmured. He finally looked at her, just long enough to meet her eyes, not long enough to shame her. Maybe that's why being decent matters more. His gaze drifted to the smashed driftwood and mud the flood had left behind. "You could have drowned." She nodded slowly. "I didn't want to die." He brushed a thumb against a scrape on his wrist. "Most folks don't want to, but it's rare to find someone who fights that hard to live." She hesitated, then said quietly, "I fought because I wasn't ready to leave my tribe. Not without being seen for who I am." He considered that, leaning an elbow on his knee. "Seems to me you just met the wrong part of that river, not the wrong part of your people." Her breath caught as she studied him. He didn't talk like the soldiers or the settlers. He didn't talk like the men she'd grown up around either. He spoke like someone who understood pain but refused to let it turn him cruel. She wondered how many storms had shaped him. The riverbank grew quiet except for the gentle hiss of the retreating current. She took a step toward him, slow, deliberate. "Most men look first." "You didn't." He shrugged one shoulder. "Ain't my place to look when someone's fighting the cold?" She felt warmth return to her cheeks. Her fingers tightened in the fabric of the shirt. "My father says a man's character is seen when no witnesses watch." He raised an eyebrow at that. "Your father sounds right wise." She shook her head softly. "He thinks kindness is weakness in the new world." The rancher chuckled under his breath. "Kindness is the only thing that'll keep this world from breaking apart," he said. His tone wasn't grand or poetic, just real. She found herself believing him. The river had nearly crushed her, but this man's words felt like a bridge being built plank by plank. She lowered herself onto a dry rock, pulling the shirt tighter around her. He moved to gather fallen branches for a fire. "You're cold," he said. "Let's fix that." In his hands, even simple gestures felt steady, grounding. She watched him work, admiring the quiet efficiency of his movements. When the fire crackled to life, she sat closer to it, letting warmth seep back into her bones. He handed her a tin cup of heated river water. "Ain't tea," he warned, "but it'll help." She accepted it with both hands. "You don't treat me like an enemy," she said softly. He poked the fire with a stick. "Because you're not." She searched his expression for any flicker of fear or suspicion. There was none. Only sincerity, the kind she rarely saw in men who wandered near Apache land. "Most settlers don't think that way," she added. He nodded. "Most folks don't think at all." His honesty made her laugh, genuinely, unexpectedly. It felt like warmth spreading through places that had been cold for years. He looked at her for a moment, almost surprised by the sound. "Haven't heard laughter like that in a long time," he admitted. Night settled around them, painting the sky purple and gold. She watched the firelight dance across his features, the faint scars, the rugged jaw, eyes shaped by much more than hardship. "You saved my life," she whispered. He shook his head. "Nah, you saved it first. I just helped you finish the job." She tilted her head. "Still, I owe you." His answer came instantly. "No, you don't." She frowned. "Where I come from, saving someone ties two spirits together." He met her gaze. "Then maybe that river tied us both to something good." Her breath trembled at the softness in his voice. Wind rustled through the cottonwoods. He stood and offered her his coat without a word. She blinked up at him. You've already given me your shirt. He smiled faintly. Shirt keeps you decent. Coat keeps you alive. One matters to me more than the other. Her heartbeat tightened. She rose slowly, stepping close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. The fire illuminated only their outlines, the tall, quiet rancher and the proud Apache woman wrapped in his clothes. You're unlike any man I've met, she whispered. He swallowed hard. Same goes for you. For a long moment they stood with nothing but the crackle of flames between them. She reached out, touching the coat at her shoulders. If our spirits are tied now, she murmured, maybe they were meant to be? His breath faltered, the weight of her words sinking into him. Finally, he said quietly, whatever happens next. You ain't facing it alone. Her chest warmed at the promise. Not a romantic vow, not a claim, just truth, simple and steady. Something worthy of trust. She nodded, accepting the bond the river had forced into existence. As the moon climbed higher, she realized something remarkable. The man who offered her clothing had also offered her dignity. And the woman who nearly drowned had found something she didn't expect, a reason to believe that strangers could be allies. Even friends. Their story wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun.